Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our workshop, how to use the DAM capability model. My name is Dr. Reem El Saleh, and I'm an associate professor at the School of Graphics Communication Management. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we have a wonderful program for you. Before we get started, I would like to start with the land acknowledgement. I'm connecting from Mississauga, Ontario, and I acknowledge that Toronto is in the dish with one spoon territory. The dish with one spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nation and peoples, European, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. Thank you again for joining us into the workshop. This workshop is actually led by our friend David Lipsey and Christine Bott. Before we start with the workshop, I have some housekeeping rules. First of all, the live caption is enabled. You can click on the live caption in the bottom of your Zoom to see the live captioning. Question and answer will be moderated by David at the end of the presentation. Feel free to post your question in the Q&A panel or through the chat. The event is recorded, and the recording is going to be shared with you into the website. And with that, I would like to turn the mic to my friend, David Lipsey, and to Christine. Thank you so much for joining us today. Take it all the way.
Reem, thanks so much. And while I'll exercise my vast technical skills here and call up our presentation, so we will be ready to go with that here in just one moment. Excuse me. So, sorry. Kristen, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself while I exercise my vast technical skills and get the presentation ready.
Sure. I'm Kristen Vogt, and I am the manager of the asset team for professional learning design at NWEA, which is a nonprofit that makes professional learning materials for teachers. And I manage a team of, as of today, 13 editors, graphic designers, layout designers, video producers, and instructional designers. We make materials for the professional learning workshops and courses.
Great, thanks so much. Let me just take care of one little housekeeping thing here. My name is David Lipsey. I'm the opportunity to be the moderator for our event here and make a little presentation about the capability model. I am one of the founders of the field of DAM and have had a chance to contribute to its growth and unfolding. And some of you probably know I serve as the global chair of the Henry Stewart conferences. I co-chair with Yona Levinson and co-direct the Rutgers University Professional Educational Program on DAM. And one of the most fun things that I get to do is work with Reem and the remarkable gathering of undergraduate students who are studying digital asset management here at Ryerson. Kristen and I really value the opportunity to share a few thoughts with you today. Here's our agenda. I'm going to introduce a little bit of background about state of the art of DAM, dive into the capability model and why this benchmarking tool is so important to all of our future. And then, more fun than anything, Kristen took the capability model, which she discovered all on her own through good librarian research, and put it to work as her organization was getting ready to undertake an enterprise digital asset management project. I'll then wrap up with some tips and tricks about how to use the capability model, and we have allocated some nice time for questions. The field of DAM as I hope almost everybody who's on the call may know, started when we needed to break down silos. We had text here and photos there and data here and graphics there, and then in little tinier language, because it really didn't exist back then, we had video, and we had the opportunity to take these content objects and say, can we find them? And what could we do if we could go find them and reuse them without having to recreate them? Our journey continues as we learn what that still means today. But as we think about where content is today, you bet it can be in a video system, it can be in a graphic system, it can be in so many different places. The interconnectivity, the dialogue amongst and between content objects is so dramatically different today than it was when DAM started. And one of the things we learn from this is just think of the silos we'll have 5 years from now that we need to run all these pipes between and discover the remarkable content that's available to us in our corporations, our museums, our social and religious organizations, or governmental. It's always interesting in thinking about DAM, and as we think about this key benchmarking tool called the capability model, what other kind of assets might we need to be managing a year from now? Where might DAM report that might be different than today because DAM is growing? What are the risk areas that we see for DAM? And as we talk about the capability model, its role as a benchmarking tool, these are the kinds of questions that the capability model helps us to be ready and open to embracing. DAM's a lot more complicated than it used to be. Wait a minute, it's 2022 already? What about those silly old silos? DAM has such a reach today into descriptive metadata, to lights on, to embedded metadata that comes along once we get the binaries, to lights on metadata, where we have human ascription to a happy dog, sad dog, mean dog, little dog, as well as the remarkable R&D that's going on in tools to help us inject purposeful and validated metadata through inferential tools, language tools, associated metadata that we get by proximity rate rankings, AI, machine generated, linked metadata, so on and so forth. And we value the work that's going on to enrich assets in today's definition of what is a digital asset. And as always, a first principle about what is an asset means that we know what the rights are, and we want those rights to travel with an asset and be as easily interpreted as possible. But much as I would like to assert that DAM is the center of the universe, one can argue with this particular display of the planets. But regardless of where one puts them in what order, DAM is not an island. It's connected to a content universe that has product information system, and for the many professionals working in the museum or gallery, libraries, and archives community, product information management is almost a synonym for collections management. It's the tombstone information and the critical structural information that might appear on packaging or on collections management about the accession of a particular art object or a theatrical work, so on and so forth. DAM fits in this world of packaging software, marketing software, social media software, of course, web production. And you'll notice over on the far right, I've used the algebraic X with poor little Pluto, lost and abandoned from our solar system, to represent the unknown future. And all of us who work in DAM, all of us who contribute to the success of our organizations or the vendors that some of us may work with, who are gathered here today, we know that there will be digital file types that we have to manage as the future unfolds. And that's part of the reason why we're here to talk about the capability model. Some of you may have seen a few years ago a really interesting video of Roy Orbison playing in the Hollywood Bowl in a complete laser construction of him. And if you were, it's pretty amazing if you've never seen this, but you know, Roy is so yesterday. In November in Las Vegas, what opened? A completely updated version of using this technology, Whitney Houston live in Las Vegas. And it's a remarkable show. The rights are cleared, the music's amazing, the performance is visually enveloping, it commingles with live performers. These are digital assets. And who would have envisioned that in the early silo tour that we did earlier? Our thinking along the way has evolved dramatically about what DAM leadership is. We know that its continual improvement is required, that maturity can go backwards, that DAM requires living scorecards. This is a kinetic, restless, growing application. It's so different than so much other enterprise software, which is interesting and fun and challenging and can drive IT crazy and hopefully can mean meaningful careers for those of you who've joined us today. And as we're thinking about this, and we think of the tenets of DAM, we look at its role, its information architecture, how we govern it, the dialectic and challenge of working with creatives when we've got to get that metadata in there, our partners in IT, and critically, the talent that makes DAM work. This is what puts together DAM, enabling an enterprise, enabling a vision as an enterprise application. And to do this, we need tools. We need tools. One of our tools is called a capability model. So a capability model, we first developed this back in 2012. It's licensed under Creative Commons, and everyone who registered for our workshop today will be getting a copy of this. And a capability model is a benchmarking tool. It's created out of experts coming together in many, many, many fields. In our case, we're talking about DAM. And what do we do when we have a benchmarking tool? Well, we use this to create a shared vision because it gives us something in common about, okay, here's the world's best practices on DAM. It helps us define the concepts because, as probably almost everyone on our workshop knows, this is a funny word. It can be a very odd application to explain. And DAM and the benchmarking tool, the capability model, gives us a way of explaining that. As Kristen's going to give us a live case study, it helps us evaluate our current place on the DAM journey and then plan for training, for collaboration, for governance, and most critically, recurringly develop a roadmap for initial and ongoing success. I'm going to talk a little bit about what this benchmarking tool covers. Then Kristen is going to talk about how she used this, and then some tips and tricks on using it. So a capability model, any capability models, and this were all invented through pedagogical work at Carnegie Mellon that's luckily openly shared for all of us, has 4 categories. A capability model explains what our organization needs to have to be ready for DAM success, how information is a dimension of this, metadata, we're going to talk about that, systems, and then of course repeatable processes that we look at in all stages of an asset's life cycle. So here are these 4 dimensions. And when we look at a capability model, we're going to walk through and highlight just a few of these. We have organization, information, systems, and processes. And a lot of these are very familiar words to everyone who works in DAM or is starting to work in DAM or hopes to work in DAM in your organization. And if we look at, we'll start with organization, we've got strategic alignment, technical, and talent. Okay, all right, I kind of get what those are. And then we're going to look at what these mean. In information, we see core building blocks of DAM, metadata, the thing we always wish for when we find the magic genie lamp and we rub it, and we use all 3 wishes for metadata. Findability search, the EverQuest. Use cases, rights, and reporting and analytics. And then we look at the systems. Do we have the infrastructure in our organization to have a resilient and responsive DAM system? This has been dramatically impacted with the rise in video. How's security? And DAM vendors spend millions of dollars proactively on the security of objects, on the security of systems. We need to have that same, of course, internal audits as we go to work in using DAM, usability, and then processes, workflow and collaboration. If we have 15 different DAM systems represented at our workshop today, we could see 15 different approaches to what goes on with workflow within a DAM system or an API or microservice driven connection with various externalized workflow systems. Governance, integration, and reuse. These are the building blocks of DAM. And so the capability model, and again, this is licensed under Creative Commons, it's yours. It's for everyone to use. And so what the capability model looks like is this. And I hope each of you wore your magnifying glasses, and your whoever employs you, you have really good eye benefits, and your ophthalmologist is quite happy with you. But don't worry about reading all this. Everybody's either gotten or is getting a copy of this, and it's way too much content to go through and ask anybody to memorize it. Kristen's going to talk about strategic alignment. So to help introduce what a capability model does, remember, this is a benchmarking tool. How am I doing compared to my peers around the world? So let's look at talent very briefly. Talent. Level 1, which is what we call initial. This is how capability models work. The operations of this industry have been distilled into 5 categories. We look across the top: initial, emerging, standardizing, operationalizing, and everything's just humming along, optimizing, a rare state. And we then go through all of the various categories and say, how are we doing? So if we look at talent, we look at initial, DAM reliance on non-specialized staff, where DAM is included with other responsibilities. That's the pilot on approach. It's so common when DAM starts. Well, would you just help out with this project? And we know in 2022, that's really not a great idea, but it's so common with where we start, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's no judgment embedded in using a capability model. And I hope everyone will take home today, or take back to your office, or if you're at home in your office, that the heart of this lives in a non-judgmental world. It's very humanistic. And those of us who train on this and believe in this, we know that this is used to give us an objective self-measure, not to make judgments on where someone or a department or a business unit is at. It's an informative tool and a guidance tool. It's not a judgmental or report card tool. In talent, we continue with training focuses on basic system uses and users, not in the context of asset management needs across the organization or enterprise talent. A very common get started. Now let's hop over to standardizing. The variety of roles needed for DAM are well defined and reflect industry standard job descriptions. Now we're asking our HR department to understand there's a profession in DAM. There are now job descriptions that require certification in DAM, either from Rutgers or from taking the classes at Henry Stewart. To date, largely the role of a DAM manager is entirely self-defined. It's whatever the job description says. And we want to change that. We want some standards. We want some proactive commonality to meaning, because it means we can raise the salaries, we can have comparisons. So we continue with standardizing. DAM team performance criteria is established. Leadership understands DAM roles and values. So we're starting to make sure that we've got kind of good Velcro around the organization when we're talking about talent. When you see the capability model, this is what's going on across those 5 categories. And I really appreciate, I learned a lot when this was shared with me when we were studying this 10 and 11 years ago about how to make one of these. This is a process-focused set of categories. And let's just briefly review. Initial processes are unpredictable, reactive. Level 2, managed, they're repeatable. Level 3, defined, They're proactively enforced, and projects tailor their processes from organization standards. Level 4, quantitatively managed, something we're still learning a lot about in the field of digital asset management. And kind of how appropriate on St. Patrick's Day, we've got the evergreen up there of everything's optimizing and humming along, it's self-renewing. The balance of the capability model goes through these eye charts like this, sorry. And then let's just look at one here, metadata. We all know metadata is the absolute master key to whatever doors to the future we're trying to unlock. Level 1, little metadata beyond file name. Let's hop over to level 4. We haven't looked at one of those yet, operationalizing. The metadata model and taxonomy extend beyond DAM into feeder and receiver systems. Maybe I've got a collections management system in a museum. DAM is housing the rich media objects for that, or the purely born digital art objects that may be in accession. Maybe it's from a PIM system and I've got my SKU, I've got my label information, I've got country of origin for some fabric that's been used in a piece of clothing I made. And the metadata model and the taxonomic structures are extending well past DAM, and metadata is governed actively. In a world where our language changes, where words matter, where we're constantly being better about how we encapsulate something we're talking about with thoughtful metadata, we know we need to actively govern metadata. So when we are looking at, how are we doing with metadata? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that we look at maybe the frequency with which we need to have metadata governance meetings. A little tip about using a capability model. Some of us may look at this and think, well, you know, David, we're doing pretty good tagging, but we have a taxonomy and it's being used in these 2 departments. So we're kind of 2.5, and that's perfectly okay. The capability model does not automatically mean that we need to have perfectly round numbers. And that's an expected aspect of how to use the capability model. And remember, what we're doing with this is we're assessing where are we at, where do we want to get to next, what are our most important areas to work on. And I have finally a tool that I can share with my management, with my teams, where we're measuring where we're at and where we want to go. So elsewhere in information, we've got findability, search, we've got use cases. And I want to comment for one moment on this. As DAM becomes more and more solidified and embedded as an enterprise application, sometimes I like to think if we really get this right, DAM is going to be like a big giant heater or water heater or cooler or something down in the basement. And on every floor of our organization, when we open a tap, out come the rights governed assets for that particular division, unit, department, workflow. And DAM is way down kind of in the infrastructure, I don't want to say basement, but it's just there in the background, working for any and for all. For those of us who are DAM leaders and DAM managers, we need to know we are experts at making use cases. Yes, that's how we buy DAM. We don't just list a bunch of requirements in a spreadsheet, we create use cases. But a year from now, when a new division is coming on, the capability model reminds us, do we still remember how to write use cases? Because as new groups or entities, or if there's an accession or a deaccession activity for your company, we need to refresh those use cases. And the capability model gives us a way to measure that. Rights is so important and an ever growing facet of awareness or set of functionalities of awareness. And there are some quite remarkable DAM systems out there that have embedded rights behaviors and controls. And we really love seeing that because we all want to do the right thing with the content that we either create or we license. Reporting and analytics is something we continue to learn a lot about. And whether it's simple reporting or whether we're getting more sophisticated reporting about what's the impact on my business here. And systems, infrastructure, security, and usability. Because you'll have a copy of this, I'm not going to go into much detail about it. I think everybody's kind of getting the idea. But each of these are important for us to be sure we know where are we at, where do we want to go. And finally, processes, workflow, governance, integration, and reuse. And I want to pause just here on governance. Governance can bring to mind kind of dull people in dull gray suits in dull offices, but it should be such a lively part of how we think about the DAM ecosystem. And we want our upper management, we want to always be thinking about hard budgeting, about staffing, about salary increases, about professional education. And one of the critical keys to opening that conversation is that we are constantly reporting out and looking at DAM governance. There can be mini governance, metadata, classic, a new tennis shoes released. It develops a street slang phrase. The DAM system, damn well better get that street slang phrase in there so that search engines find the street slang for a tennis shoe, or the warehouse ends up with the tennis shoes. That's a form of governance. It can be pretty frequently, but the more annual governance meeting about what is DAM doing, what are the measurements and metrics, what is the return on investment or on mission impact. We need those governance conversations going on at a larger level, so our hard budget lines are increasing, they're well respected, and DAM's contribution to overall risk mitigation or mission enablement is talked about at executive levels. Integration, something that will always be changing, bring on Whitney Houston. And reuse, why did we do this? We started this with R&D going on in the mid-1990s, where there were desktop publishing tools. And one of the taproots of DAM, as silly as it sounds, was, could I just take this content and make CD-ROMs from it? And you think, wow, David, CD-ROMs, I see those on eBay or back in the archive stack somewhere. But what are we doing? We want to create once, we want to use many, and we want guidance along our journey about how to do this. Hence, we have a capability model to give us that structure. And speaking of how to use the capability model, it's a self-assessment of current capabilities. We can use this to select the most important areas for improvement. We set goals to measure, and we always measure twice. And there's some things about not how to do this. When Carnegie Mellon invented maturity and now called capability models, these are not intended as a checklist. They're not intended to be used once. They're intended to be revisited. Like DAM itself, these are living, kinetic, growing organisms that develop new geometries as time goes by. They're not designed to be used by yourself. They're designed to be used with your super users, your brand ambassador, your DAM ambassadors, your stewards, your key managerial stakeholders. And to exemplify this, what better than to hear a story about how DAM actually went to work in the capability model, how the capability model went to work to help a large organization get ready for DAM. And I'd like to welcome Kristen Vogt, who is joining us today to talk about her particular use and their organization's use of the capability model. And Kristen, I'll be glad to be the very sophisticated slide mover, and over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, so I will be telling you how I use the DAM capability model at my organization. Next slide. So where I work, NWEA is a nonprofit that facilitates thousands of professional learning workshops every year for teachers and offers online courses. And when I got there just over 2 years ago, I realized that it was hard to find anything. Everyone relied on institutional memory to locate files. We were working in silos, and we had no integrations with our systems. Next slide. So I decided I needed a systematic approach to the problem. And my organization has an internal Lean Six Sigma and continuous improvement program. I had already completed a Lean Six Sigma yellow belt, and Lean Six Sigma, or LSS, is a system for increasing organizational efficiency and decreasing error. So I decided to go to the next level and do a Lean Six Sigma green belt project. And for a green belt, you need an executive champion and an executive sponsor, as well as a volunteer team who agrees to help you with your project. So that would get me executive buy-in and visibility in the organization. Next slide. So the first step in a Lean Six Sigma project is defining the problem. I knew that our asset management wasn't good, but I needed a shared language and a definition. And I am a librarian. So of course, the first thing I did was go do some research. And I found the DAM capability model. And that gave me a framework for defining the problem. So, my Lean Six Sigma coach and I looked at all of these categories that were available within the capability model and decided I should narrow it down and select specific categories to survey. I was already pursuing permission for an RFP for a DAM system, so we decided to not include systems and we would focus on the other categories. Next slide. So I decided to survey my stakeholders on 5 areas within the capability model. We wanted my project to really focus on areas where my project team and I could directly affect change in the organization through shifts in culture and awareness and appreciation of the value of DAM. These were the top areas where we saw potential for kind of greater understanding and standardization having a really large impact. So we looked at within organization, all 3 of those areas: strategic alignment, technical, and talent. And then within information, use cases, and within processes, workflows, and collaboration. Next slide. So what I did next is I took the capability model and those levels of capability and I made it into a survey. This is a kind of sample of the survey similar to the one that I sent to my original stakeholders. The original survey was created in Smartsheet because that's our internal tool where I work, but I'm recreating it in a Google form so that I can share it outside of my organization. So I basically put each capability level for each category that I was surveying on into the survey, and the stakeholders could choose the one that they thought best described our organization's current state. So next slide.
I'm pausing here for a moment so everybody can kind of take a look at it, and also just to compliment Kristen on using this particular approach to for voting, basically.
Yeah.
On where are we, because this is what one does with the capability model, and this was Kristen figuring all this out, which I think is really neat and so fun to share.
Yeah. So the winner of the absolute lowest score where I work was the organization strategic alignment category. As you can see, almost every category scored between a 1 and a 2, which are the initial and emerging levels, with only 1 scoring as a solid 2 or emerging. My Lean Six Sigma coach was a little bit put off by that one because he felt that folks were rating themselves as technically higher than our organization was using them for, and but I was not surprised, and it was pretty much what I had expected. Next slide. So with my initial measures I had to decide on a focus. My coach and I decided that I should focus my project on that lowest scoring category, strategic alignment, because it had the biggest potential for improvement. And I also thought that if I could improve that category, it would probably raise our capability in other areas. If you take a look at this category, the initial level, little to no understanding of DAM operations are independent, uncoordinated. And the emerging level, so we're halfway between these two, is organizational units confer on DAM at a level that allows ad hoc asset sharing, mostly through manual processes. So that's basically the just email me the link to the thing, which is how my organization had been existing for a long time. But then if you look at optimizing, you get DAM's value is understood at the highest meaningful executive level. DAM strategy is proactive. DAM strategy exists. Assets are reused. It's giving us competitive advantage. So if we could work toward that, that would be a huge change kind of across the board. Next slide. So the next step in the Lean Six Sigma process after measure is analyze. So the next thing we did was to brainstorm barriers to capability in this strategic alignment category. We used prompts for the brainstorm that were consistent with that level 3 of capability, which is the standardizing level within the strategic alignment category, because we're at a 1.5, we're between a 1 and a 2, and so getting to a 3 seems possible and realistic. So the prompts that we used were, what are the barriers to collaborating across teams to manage our digital assets? What are the barriers to being able to find, use, reuse, repurpose digital assets? What are the barriers to creating a common understanding of digital asset management? So next slide. So our brainstorm results. The group brainstormed barriers to capability, and I deduplicated them because, of course, great minds think alike, and some of them came up with very similar barriers. So after deduping, I had 25 barriers. In Lean Six Sigma, we divide the total from our brainstorm by 5, and that is how many we vote on for the top winners. So we voted on the top 5 barriers to DAM capability, and these are the top 5 in order. So we've got number 1, no resources budgeted toward a cross-team solution, time, platform, or people. We've got the cranky one, number 2, which is external control from other teams, IT, business systems, and procurement without control from affected teams. So meaning people, the stakeholders didn't feel that they had a voice in the tools and systems and integrations. No dependable system platform, so platform crept back in, of course. And many silos prevent larger strategy, streamlining, and consistency, and no efficient way to organize, sort, or access. Those are our top 5. So next slide. So our next step was to brainstorm solutions to those top 5 barriers. And we used the Lean Six Sigma brainstorm prompts, including list all the expensive solutions you can think of, list all the cheap solutions you can think of, list all the off-the-wall wild solutions you can think of, even if you think that it's, we would never do it, just list it anyway. And this is meant to get the broadest brainstorm results. Next slide. So for this one, we got 15 deduplicated solutions. A lot of folks came up with similar solutions, which is great. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So we voted on 3 top solutions, which are listed here in order. Create cross-team governance for taxonomy, metadata naming conventions to make assets more findable across the org. Invest in enterprise level DAM platform. I was already working on this, so that was good. And create a cross-functional group of DAM ambassadors who develop DAM standards and processes while representing the needs of their teams. I did not write these, the group wrote them. So in a way, I felt like I'd already started to change the way people at my organization were thinking about DAM through sharing the capability model and having conversations about that and using that shared language. Next slide. So next steps in Lean Six Sigma process, actually the final steps in Lean Six Sigma are improve and control. So my next steps with my project team will be to implement our solutions by creating that cross-team governance and those standards. We're already approved to get a DAM system, so that's already in the works. And then to create a control plan, we plan to use feedback mechanisms and analytics to ensure that our best practices and standardizations are successful. And then I will resurvey stakeholders and remeasure dam capability. And I am feeling optimistic that our level will improve after all of this. And my big lesson learned from all of this is that buy-in at all levels is absolutely essential to success, from executive to individual contributor. Everyone needs to understand and to be heard. And that's my story. And that's my email in case you want to email me, and I'm happy to chat if you're doing a similar project or anything. Thanks.
Thanks, Kristen. And I'll leave this slide up here for a moment so that if anybody does want to capture Kristen's email. And there's a tacit and a quiet, almost substrate phenomena here in what Kristen did and what NWEA did together. And it has to do with change management. How many of us have grappled with DAM and been in conversations where we have to explain it's what happens that matters, it's not the technology that matters. And by applying this particular LSS approach to this and using the capability model, the organization began not insignificant steps forward. If this was Captain May I, these are like big steps forward to think about the change management and organizational readiness that we know will make DAM have a much higher likelihood of success, and to use sort of a business school term, of time to value. We want to see what the investment that's going to be made financially, emotionally, technologically, human time-wise, that the time to value is as minimal as possible. And we want those values articulated. We want them articulated to start. And as Kristen mentioned, we want to revisit them because that's what a capability model does. This isn't once and done. This isn't something that's fairly immobile like accounting or payroll software where you update tax table. It's like, okay, wow, that was fun. This is an entirely different kettle of technological fish and content management fish. And we want the organization to be as ready as we can for this. Kristen, something I really valued in how you talked about this too, is approaching this as a chance to see where are we today and not to judge where are we today. And I think that was so important. And was that apparent to you as you started using the capability model, or just sort of how the LSS methodology works?
I think it was apparent to me, and also I think it's part of the sort of the librarian brain too. It's we are radically neutral. We want for you what you want for yourself. So it's like I see people struggling at work, and I just go like, no, I'm not looking at fault or something. I'm looking at how to make things better for everybody.
Yeah, and I think DAM, I really like that phrase, radically neutral. There's a theory of practice in conflict management and mediation called shared neutrals. When we think about the role of the librarian, there's never been a greater need. We can lapse into some fantasy that if I just plug that in a search bar, magic happens, poof, outcome results. But it's the professional librarianship underneath, around, and between DAM and reality that make the concept of being radically neutral, of using shared neutrals to enable the adjudicated success in getting assets. With the capability model, this model is designed, and the benchmarking that we were all trained in is designed to help us use this on a recurring basis, which Kristen figured out without any prompting from me, that she's going to revisit this. So one of my favorite questions always with DAM is, what's next? Yeah, it's a great tool for self-assessment, David, I get that, but what's next? And what we encourage and coach on using the capability model is to take this framework, and then we look at people, objectives, strategy, technology, people, processes, technology, and budget. There are different groups of words for this about what's necessary to enable growth. So when we use a capability model, and I'm going to encourage everybody, get your questions ready and get those posted because we're going to be turning to them shortly. There are 11 steps that answer the question, what's next? First is, as a result of moving from level 2 to level 3 in, for example, metadata, my organization will be able to. So what do we do first when we start to actually use the capability model after we've done the mapping? We articulate a goal. And then what do? We look at who are the people who are impacted by this desired growth. So if I move from 2 to 3, I move from 1 to 2, whatever might be right, who's impacted by this? At question 3, to get ready to plan for this, what workflows are going to change? Am I going to alter my relationship with an agency, for example? What partners, for example, might be impacted by this? Do I have licensing workflows that might be changing? The 5th step, do I have any software or hardware purchases that are necessary? So in whatever I'm looking at, all over that capability model, I'm going to go from here to here. Yeah, sometimes I need to maybe get a microservice. Maybe I need some help with an API. Maybe I'm going to buy a barcode utility because I'm going to start doing some dynamic inventorying, whatever the answer might be. As I'm getting ready to use the model, I say, do I need any purchases? What will it cost? Somehow that's part of every conversation. And then the always interesting thing about change management is who has to say yes and who all can say no, and what is the governance discussion? And this is always so fascinating as we try to think, how do we make DAM better? Is figuring out, usually there's only a little itty bitty group of people who have to really say yes, but there's a whole lot of people who can say no. And I always counsel when we're doing the decision tree analysis to look at how many people can I bring into governance? Not that I want to drive myself crazy with this, but the more people I involved in governance, the more I'm tacitly talking about the organizational awareness of the meaning, reach, and purpose of DAM, and about keeping my hard budget line growing. Number 8, I tie very much like back to number 1. As a result of moving from stage 2 to stage 3 in metadata, my organization will be able to fill in the blank. And then I want to design the report. I want to see the report. And when we use the capability model, when DAM is in place, we actually go through and we write the reports. Then a certain number of months from now, we pull those reports out. And if we have the affirmation that we've accomplished something, great. If we have the affirmation that we missed by this much, or we didn't articulate the goal right, great. It's kind of like null search results. We have data. We can take the mark and measurement of what we thought we were going to do and have a conversation about it. But it's not obscure, it's not obfuscated, it's there for us to review and talk about. And finally, we have what some of you may have heard me talk about, ROI cubed or ROI 3. And this is 3 ways of looking at what's the return on, we'll start with investment. So this is the classic, places have been doing ROIs, it's like probably, 14, 12 or something like that. How much money are we going to save? And I hope all of us have gone through the exercise of looking at how much time is without DAM is wasted on search, on commissioning a second copy of something because one can't find it, the frustration of employees, or maybe even the inability to attract top-tier talent because there is no DAM and we have a lot of expense because we're not performing at highest levels. So what's the hard ROI? And in DAM, one of the most interesting questions with this application about, usually it's about 18 months after go live, is have you measured back the return on investment that was forecasted? And there's probably about a 20% budget increase if the answer to that is yes. And most organizations forget to do this, or the CFO or whoever signed off or purchasing signed off on this. Going back to prove the ROI almost always means more investment capital or operating money is available. ROI, hard ROI is the start. But also let's redefine the letter I here. Kristen works for a nonprofit organization. Her board isn't expecting her to do a profit and loss statement. Yeah, operating money, of course, there's a balance sheet. But what is the management measured on where Kristen works? What is the management of a museum measured on? Or if I'm doing social services, or I'm the Red Cross or the Salvation Army, it's on, have I met my mission? Have I delivered services? Have I helped people if we make this change? And for the thousands of us who either work in or support, millions of us work with organizations and work in roles or contribute to organizations where we make an impact on the arts, on the health of our societies and our peoples and our community. What is the impact on mission and mandate? And being able to articulate that along with hard capital ROI alters and broadens the conversation. And I would assert that even in profit-making settings where P&L is the mission, that there's an opportunity there, because almost every organization has a value statement or has a mission statement to be one of the most desirable places to work in Lincoln, Nebraska, or whatever it might be. And I really like the challenge of tying DAM into quality of work life, accomplishment of recruiting, to providing advanced technology for our employees, things that are those really ROI if you're running a profit-making corporation? Yeah, no, yes, no, yes. But they absolutely are in value statements. And sometimes we forget when we're justifying a DAM purchase that these are very real. And if this isn't just rhetoric about these are our values, we can generally tie DAM into our value statements. And the capability model gives us an opportunity to continually be re-expressing those. And finally, what's the return on information? There's a whole body of practice called Infonomics about looking at the value of data. And one of the interesting things about DAM is that it creates data. It creates data that has nothing to do with the actual assets themselves, but maybe their use, maybe the reach of the organization, maybe the frequency of touch points if we store what's used in the DAM. And the return on information can sometimes, in a very quiet way, it generally ends up being kind of a year 2, year 3 benefit of DAM. But it's quite interesting to look at the capability model and go, is there information here that will really help me understand beyond what might be in transactional systems? How are we doing with the assets we create? So we can look at ROI and kind of, we're adding like, this is like trifocals instead of just one focals on what is the return on investment, on impact and initiative, and finally on information. And if we do all of these things, we're in the position where we can ask our colleagues around an organization, from customer service or the people who get all the emails, email us at, it's fascinating to ask them what's next. And what are you getting questions about, which helps all of us understand what's next. And then to look at through the capability model, if we deploy this in a way to understand where do we start, where are we a year from now, where are we 2 years from now. And what I like to think about DAM is that oftentimes when we start, it's kind of a little bit of a monochromatic perspective. And this wonderful image, the only part of this that's actually dimensional is just in front of the tree. The rest is all a painted backdrop. And you can peek at the bottom of the screen, but of course, that's the backdrop for the Wizard of Oz. And one of the things I really love about DAM is that I don't know where the yellow brick road is, but I really know they're there. And I know Dorothy doesn't only have to go back to Kansas. Having grown up in Iowa, I get to say that. So there's so much that each of your organizations can do with DAM. The tool that Kristen put such elegant and informed use to for her organization, or usage of in her organization, gives us the chance, all of us the chance. It's free. Yeah, it takes training. Yeah, it takes time. But this is a tool that our colleagues around the world have contributed to help us figure out what's the right place to go with digital asset management. And as many of us know, if we are ready, one of the funny things about DAM is that what it means for NWEA is maybe different than what it means for History Colorado, right down the street from where Kristen is, what it means for Comcast, much of which is headquartered in Colorado. Dam is like a big piece of silly putty. It means something different to all of us. It's one of the biggest challenges about this field. I think it's one of the biggest aspects of why it's so fascinating to work in this field, because we can do so much with this. The capability model, with which we thank you for the time to share today, is an enabling tool to make the silly putty go to work and have the silly putty be different a year from now. So on behalf of Ryerson University, this completes the formal part of our conversation. And now Kristen and I are available for questions. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I see we did have one question come in so far here, Kristen. Let me see. I'll read this. Knowing the work that goes into getting dams to a higher level in the capability model, notice I'm switching the word from maturity to capability. Do you have advice on how to convince senior management to do things right against the need for getting images into dam yesterday? The pressure is real because we're behind the curve compared to staff expectation. So Kristen, why don't you talk a little bit about preparedness, and then I'll give a perspective on that.
Well, I think that using the capability model to educate is very helpful in that regard, because it's a validation of how we can progress along that road. And there's a recognition there from executives and leadership that they can see that, especially the one that I like to leverage the most is where it shows that it gives competitive advantage as you move up in the capability model. And that is important, to those folks. So I think you have to break out kind of the soundbite parts of it that are going to be really important to them, and socialize that with executive leadership so that they understand that that's why you're moving in that direction. That's been my experience thus far.
And as I read this question, another thought occurs to me is when one is stuck in this kind of wicked circle, it's a real vortex. Well, no, you don't have time to step back and plan because you're not getting your work done. And to me, I think any of us who are involved in management, we should always hold a mirror up to being told something like that, because this question has a lot to do with management and resource allocation, and very little to do with staff efficiency. And all it does is generally get people to want to work someplace else. It's a very, very frustrating situation when we know we can get a process to do something better. And sometimes, and I don't know, and I won't mention who's asked the question, but thank you for it. Sometimes it's worthwhile to try to think of, and even ask your supervisors, your managers, your executives, where was another time when we had this kind of pressure because we were behind the curve? And to try to dig out some other time when a system was based, a system was purchased, a technology was acquired, and it was because we were always behind. And depending on the age of your organization and how honest people are, here's some possible answers. One is, there was a time when the organization went from desktop personal computers to shared network computers. And chances are there was some pretty funky word processing tools that were used. And they were pretty hard to use. They were expensive. It was really hard to share files. And odds are there were even a lot more administrative staff who were always behind in what they had to produce because of the tools. Look what we do today. The number of administrative support staff is radically lower than it is, but the productivity is skyrocketed. And it didn't happen without the need to stop, take a step back, make an investment, look at ROI, and find a route and a supporter to someone to encourage that. Here's a second example. I suspect that all of us today, if we could all raise our hands and see everybody in a room, wouldn't that be nice? We would say, if I asked the question, hey, can everybody see their paycheck online? And then probably get some like some, depending on age, who would go, what are you talking about? Of course I can see my paycheck online. Well, there was a time at which seeing a paycheck online was just a figment of someone's imagination. And we had to invest in accounting systems that allowed for self-service, as opposed to going to the payroll clerk. There might be 5 people in line because everybody's trying to see, do I have some leave I have to use up? And that would be a bizarre thing to see today. Why are all those people in the accounting office? Is there something going on I don't know about? And the answer is we have self-service. And there was a point in time at which paychecks were walked around and handed out. And the idea of being able to look dynamically at what's my payroll today, what's my remaining leave, have I used any sick time, do I get any bonus hours, and so on and so forth. That concept of self-sufficiency just was not present in accounting. And today that would be like the high chuckle factor if you went to work at a place and they said, well, Reem, we're going to bring your paycheck around next week. Will you be in your office? It would be, what are you talking about? And I don't know, to the person who asked that question, thank you for it, if any of these help, but somewhere there's someone in senior management who has lived this absolutely and has solved this problem elsewhere. And I always try to stop and think and take that conversation elsewhere, because being behind the curve is a common impetus for technology purchasing. So Kristen, I see some other thoughts that come to mind on this?
No, I think you pretty much summed it up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not at all uncommon. And one of the beautiful things about the capability model and about, there are great tools, and I hope everyone's seen these, or you go poke around on calculating return on investment, that many of the vendors have make these available, and they're terrific. And that's sometimes, maybe that data helps to build the case, where do a couple of those ROI exercises. And in the case of an overworked staff, here are some places to look. One is, has there been voluntary attrition because of the working conditions? And look, unemployment in our field is near zero. Near zero. In fact, there are some who assert that we have negative unemployment in our field. If you're at an organization that's experiencing a lot of voluntary attrition because of working conditions or goofy digital tools, there's a real cost to that. If errors or mistakes are being made, that's a second place to look. In the drive and the impetus that all of us have to do good work, get the work done, if there are out of balance expectations, mistakes get made. No big mystery about that. And it's hard to deny that. And the third is to look at what the coefficiencies are, if Dan was there, if Dan was not there, on whatever it is that you're producing with the kind of pressure that you're talking about. Oh, this is a fun question. I like this one. We sometimes feel that we are stuck. I like the first question too. We sometimes feel that we are stuck at the third stage of the model, not quite able to get to a 4 or a 5. Is this common? And the answer is absolutely, unambivalently, without hesitation, yes. Stage 5 is rare, and I've done these kind of globally, and lots of them repeatedly for large corporations, the capability model interventions. And stage 5 ends up kind of operating as a persistent goal rather than an actuality. It's so diffuse across an organization, and also its meanings change so much. And so stage 5 is extremely rare to see. We might see it on operational security. That's not uncommon, but even then, security changes all the time. So what's stage 5? Be prepared for unanticipated incursions or other terrible things that people try to do to our digital infrastructure. And stage 4, I think, yes, that gets there. And then sometimes, so what disrupts a stage 4? Well, here's a couple of answers. One is that if you are in a private sector organization and there's an accession event and another organization or in the not-for-profit world, maybe a library is bought that comes into a museum or into an archival situation, and it's very disruptive. We had to redo the taxonomy because we just bought a pet food company and we never had pet food words before. So stage 4, think of stage 4 and stage 5 as kind of, to use that lovely, lovely phrase from that book, an angle of repose. It's an attitude and a positioning of being ready for change. In Piagetian terms, that's that tension between accommodation and assimilation, where I need to have the accommodating structures. That's kind of stage 4. So I can assimilate new things that are coming along. So developmentally in an organization, stage 4 kind of operates as an attitude or an angle of, yeah, I welcome the disruption and I want my management to know it's going to happen. So this has probably happened, Kristen, where you worked when maybe new digital file types came in.
Yeah, we've had to deal with articulate storyline and SCORM files for e-learning, and those are new. And then also a lot more remote video production that we weren't doing before because we went permanently remote after COVID. And some of our folks were already remote. We were kind of a hybrid shop, but after COVID, they decided to make everyone permanently remote. And prior to that, all the video producers were in-house, and then they were like mailing each other hard drives and ridiculous stuff. So folks working with with video, there's a lot of complexity there and a lot of kind of bandwidth issues and stuff that they hadn't really dealt with before from a remote perspective.
Very common, and the ever unfolding wider shores of video cause a lot of fractures and sometimes raise enormous investments that need to be made. It's also interesting for some of you who might be getting started with DAM to go ask to see last year's UPS, FedEx, DHL, whatever it is, budget about sending hard drives to each other. And when you're looking at doing that ROI, I know it sounds silly, but there are still amazing amounts of things that get sent via FedEx or UPS or the mail in the US or Canada that you think, why we spent $18,000 on that last year? And sometimes it just makes sense, or there's exigent circumstances, fine. But it is one of those kind of funny ways to look at possible ROI, to look at the cost of the budget that's allocated to shipping hard goods. And is it ever going to all be eliminated? No. But sometimes you can find some really surprising stories there. So, Kristen, we had a question come in for you, which is, it sounds like the Six Sigma approach is fairly embedded in the organizations. Did you meet with resistance to participating in this?
I met with some, not too much. Mostly folks are okay with participating in it as long as you don't make them do all the heavy lifting of the Lean Six Sigma stuff, that's my job, so that's okay because it's my project, and it'll be my very flattering, lovely green belt, which I'm not sure how one wears that atop one's business casual attire, but we'll see. Yeah, for the most part, because it is sort of a institutionalized where I work. I mean, that's why I was trying to leverage it. But I think that if you are kind of just presenting it to people as to where they drop in and help you, and they're getting to voice something that they feel disempowered about, generally speaking, that there hasn't really been a vehicle for that, then I think that they're actually very interested in participating. And so for the most part, they were pretty enthusiastic.
Yeah, I found that same thing in doing a lot of capability model workshops. The most awkward time is always the first time. There will be a lot of ones and twos, and it doesn't matter how encouraging, how supportive, how nurturing the environment is, and the executive is very welcoming. it's really tough to raise your hand and say, hello, we don't do anything, we're one. And it's a funny feeling, to say that in sort of Quaker Meeting House style of, look at me, I don't do any of this well. But that's actually a great outcome. And I think in the hands of a skilled trainer and making sure with the capability model that it's totally understood that it's a non-judgmental measurement tool, a benchmarking tool, and not a harsh judgmental tool of guilty, guilty, guilty. It's now, all that being said, and as hopeful as I can be about that, the reality in the room, that sometimes DAM coming in will reveal that two departments are doing exactly the same thing. And wow, can that be uncomfortable? Yeah, you're nodding your head there. You have a comment for us, Kristen?
Well, we operate in a very siloed manner, as you know, and so the department that I'm in makes the professional learning materials, the actual workshop materials and course materials, and I am not in the marketing department, and the marketing department has been traditionally very separate from us. This is kind of a backward situation where usually DAM evolves out of marketing need at an organization, and instead it was professional learning design. And so when we got together on that, we definitely realized that there have been, I think what happens is that people operate from a position of presumed resource scarcity, and they kind of get protective of their stuff and what they've got and their systems and stuff like that, because they've worked so hard to create this little reactive siloed thing that has been manually created. And so when we kind of start to pull that apart, we see that there is unnecessary duplication. And so that's where we have to come in and say that, when we do this, it's for all of us. We want everyone to be heard and understood here and have this serve everyone.
And it'll be so interesting, I think, for you when X number of months from now, when it's time to do it again, to see at NWEA what emerges as the next critical areas to work on. And one of the fun things to do with the capability model, we've done this a lot, where we take it and we put it in just in Excel, and then color code the blocks in green, yellow, red, or whatever that might be. And then 3 years later, look at what's gone from red to yellow, or from color to color to color. And it's quite fun to share that. So many professionals work in DAM without working with a team and in a community. COVID has both made that more acute and in some ways less acute, because we're together a lot more because of this strange two-dimensional world we're on right now. And we're in Toronto and Boulder and Mississauga and wherever Sandritas, our marketing assistant, is calling in from, and all of you. So COVID's had this kind of strange double effect where we are, I think a lot of us feel like we're more part of a community, and DAM has certainly exploded in these last 2 years. The attendance at the Henry Stewart events has been extraordinary. The museum conference we had in February, we had well north of 2,200 registrants or something like that. And in DAM Industry Week, in a couple of weeks, we have hundreds and hundreds of professionals who join us by day, by sector. And in the enrollment in Reams classes here at Ryerson are the highest they've ever been, and that's just going to go up. At the same time, many times the DAM is a team, as we've said over the years, a team of one. And part of what the capability model can do is create, even in virtualized work settings, the chance to feel a little engaged with more than just me in my office in my house, in a way that's pretty interesting and generally across departmental. So we had another question come in about how often does the capability model change? Well, the last update, the biggest update that we made was in October of 2021. So what's that, 5-6 months ago? And there's a new row being added now about digital preservation. And DAM's not engineered to be digital preservation. There are some vendors do some pretty neat things with preservation, but there's some fabulous digital preservation tools that are out there that DAM can co-mingle, cooperate with. But we've had a lot of requests to put that in to help measure, okay, within DAM, within whatever vendor I'm using, how is it helping me? What should I be thinking about as far as digital preservation? That'll be done in 2 or 3 months, and it'll be added to the model. So it's pretty continually updated. We love it when people find typos, or like, why did you phrase it like this? We at CASDAM, at the Center for Advanced Studies in Digital Asset Management, where the model is housed, and we love those kind of suggestions to try to make it read better, be better. And thanks to Kristen's help, we're going to have the Google form that we will be distributing. So Winnie, I'm sorry, I shouldn't mention any names, but thanks for your question. Great workshop. The question is for you, Kristen. How long did this project take? Oh, what a nice question. Did it take a while to brainstorm the barriers and the solutions? What a nice question.
It did. It's been going on over a period of several months. So part of that was because I have many other things to do, as noted by, in that earlier question with regard to kind of resourcing our time around being more proactive and being more strategic in these processes versus our daily grind. So it's taken a while. And also, I think because we decided to space out the surveys a little bit so that folks didn't get survey fatigue. So we kind of made sure that there was a little bit of space between each one as well. But yeah, it's been several months, and now I really have to go into overdrive for the next part and get into improve phase, because it's going to be happening in parallel with us getting a new system. So it's really important to have, I think, those two things come together so that we have proper kind of cross-team cooperation standards and governance around that new work.
Great. Well, we've got a couple more minutes for questions, and anyone who would like to send one in, we welcome those. Well, I see if any more questions come in, I'd like everyone to know that next month here at Ryerson, we'll be having a workshop that we will publicize, and it's about DAM and AI. Always a curious creature, that old AI. Does it or doesn't it? And we look forward to that. And Reem, we have our next workshop after DAM and AI is about DAM and kind of creative operations, about one-to-one marketing, and how does DAM help us have a better connection with people who are interested in what we do. We're hoping to schedule a rights workshop, which I think will be terrific. And then we will have in June a national event that we call DAM for Canada Coast to Coast. But it doesn't matter where you live. If you've got a zip code or a postal code, you can come. But we have speakers from all over Canada who will join us to talk about how DAM is going to work from PEI all the way out to British Columbia. And there's so much exciting work going on throughout Canada in digital asset management. It's kind of fun to have a geographic focus. For those of you who attend, we have wonderful non-door prizes. It is a virtual event. And we have great non-door prizes from Indigenous Canadian or women-owned businesses throughout Canada, and some other fun special things we do for the community on that day in June. And we'll be announcing the date soon, and we've got an exciting program, lots of great speakers that are lined up. And Reem, would you like to help close the event, and then I'll make some finishing remarks?
Yes, thank you, everyone. And yes, I just want to say thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, David, and thank you, Kristen, for the wonderful workshop. DAM Capability Model is really a great tool. And I hope that this workshop open or provide at least an introduction information about how to use it. Feel free to send an email to David and Kristen about question. We will be sharing the recording and any additional resources from Kristen and David soon after the event. And yes, I would like also to say that we will also stay tuned. We will be announcing all those wonderful workshops and the DAM event. And hopefully also we're hoping by the time we reach June that we'll have some in person, never know. So surprises, surprises, just wait for us. And David, anything?
Yeah. So as we develop a perspective on what the capability model can mean, let's reflect about something else about DAM today. We've been hard at work at this application for 20 years. And let's keep the following statement in mind. DAM today, where it starts, is where DAM used to finish. So the starting gate in 2022, 2023, for those of you who are embarking on DAM for the first time, for those of you who are replacing dams that serve their purpose and maybe the vendor went out of business, maybe you got video and it didn't handle video. Dams are always being updated, but where we start today, we jump the curve. We don't have to learn all those things that were learned over the last 20 years. We start today where DAM used to end. And it's a very affirming opportunity about the capability and I'll say the maturity, even though I'm not crazy about that word, but the power, the reach, the possibilities that DAM just arrives on the scene and ready to do. Today, we saw an exemplary approach, a true best practice about how to make manifest DAM starting today where it used to finish. My compliments, Kristen, and I was so thrilled to hear about what you did with this and to share in this presentation. On behalf of Ryerson and the two of us who we've enjoyed a lot getting this together and sharing with you today. We love helping all of you jump the curve. Be in touch. Come join us at Ryerson again at the Henry Stewart events. Sign up for the Rutgers classes because we're all moving ahead quickly in a really wonderful and stimulating field. This concludes today's workshop, and thank you for attending.
Thank you, everyone.